We are focusing on young people, certainly because at the last synod on young people, it was the first synod when young people actually participated because, as you all know, Pope Francis invited them to speak. And even in the parts when they couldn't speak, they voiced their expressions of support or of not support by applause or by something else. To me, it was very interesting that the young people felt that they needed to have a voice also within the church. So in the final document of the synod, it came out that one of the things that they recommended was the formation of a group of young people that would meet once or twice a year, even in Rome. It was also mentioned that we needed to have a post-synod gathering similar to the one that we had prior to. So that's where we are in the process at the moment. I personally believe that it's very important that we not just give a talk every now and then and say to the young people, they need to be involved. Young people cannot be involved unless we allow them to be involved in the life of the church. And one of the greatest complaints, if you want to call it that, or challenges that young people see, is they don't have an active participation in the church. Is that because they're not interested? No. We're all interested in the same things. It's just they haven't found a vehicle, a way of doing it. And so this post-synod gathering is the beginning of a process that I hope will continue every year here in Rome, where we gather young people to talk about where the church is in different parts of the world and what do we need to do for young people. Well, obviously the role of the Dicastery is to gather the young people, to take a leadership role in bringing young people into sometimes structures that are not very friendly to the young people. So our task mainly is to supply them with information, but more than information, it's to encourage them and to gather them together and to listen. You know, it's not just enough to gather young people together so that we all have a great party. That's not the aim of this. The aim is that we encourage them to speak their mind, but we also encourage bishops all over the world to listen to what they have to say. It is not a one-way street. It's two ways. And if you don't have one, if you have one without the other, there's no dialogue. We may talk about dialogue, but there's no dialogue. So we need openness on behalf of the bishops of the dioceses of the world to listen to the young people. We need openness, not to be afraid of their ideas, and we need to gather young people together in their own environment. And I believe that's what we need to do. I would, of course, my big interest at the moment, as we prepare for this gathering of almost 300 young people from across the world, and many of, or not many, but several of them will have attended the synod here in the past, is to see what has been the effect of the Synod of Bishops in the lives of in the life of the church in their regions. Has it been effective? Has it been talked about? Has it been implemented? And also to speak very much about the document that Pope Francis, because there are two different tracks here. You have one hand, you have what the bishops wrote rather what was the fruit of the discussion of a whole month of dialogue and speaking to each other. And then there is Pope Francis, who almost spent 9 months thinking about the gathering, which he attended every single meeting of the synod, and listened. So there is a second moment, is how has the document been received? What have we done for the document? Well, that's a very difficult question. An awful lot of things that Pope Francis wrote in Christus Vivit are things that reminded me of what was said in the Synod Hall by many of the young people. But there is one part of that I had never reflected upon and never thought much about. It is either paragraph maybe 30, 31, 32, where Pope Francis begins to speak about that Jesus was a young person. You know, I've spent my life probably reading the gospel, but I never thought of Jesus as a young person. To me, that affected me a lot, because I see so many similarities in young people today and what Jesus did. Just for one moment, think. First of all, he had the courage to take on the scribes and the Pharisees. He was a young person, and he wasn't intimidated by ways of thinking of the Pharisees, of the Sadducees, of the high priests at the time. He wasn't afraid. Remember, he died at 33 years of age, more or less. So he would be invited to our gathering of young people. So, you look at it that. Then I think of, how Jesus was so compassionate. Well, who displays compassion more than any other segment of society in our world today? At least in my personal experience, it's the young people. They're the ones that are out there, solving the problems of the world by practically doing things. Who volunteers when we have natural tragedies like flooding, like earthquakes, like tidal waves, whatever? It's the young people who are out there. Also, Jesus had the same intentions that many young people have. He wasn't afraid to confront society. And the image that comes to my mind is a young man standing in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square. They're all young people who did it. Even in my own lifetime in 1968, in the Cultural Revolution, they were all young people. Jesus too was a young person. He was young in spirit. He was young. I had never thought of Jesus as a young person. And so to me, that's one of the great highlights, or one of the things that I admired or inspired me a lot about the document of Pope Francis.